When people ask me, what's so special about First Baptist on Fifth? I answer quickly. It's not our building, though lovely, or our worship, though meaningful, not our gatherings, though life-giving, or even our missions and ministries in the world, though impactful. The very best part of First on Fifth? Our people, hands down. In our confession of identity, we said this of our community. Here, you'll see retirees and families with rambunctious little ones, teenagers discovering their identities, middle-agers juggling all the demands of this season, young people navigating adulthood for the first time, and seniors rich in wisdom and encouragement. You can read our fiery op-eds in the paper, pass us moving about on the city streets, see us building ramps for the underserved, catch us finding beauty in our gardens and on hiking trails, and experience us taking delight in the world. At the core of our community, we are folks who love each other well. And at the core of our life together, we share in meaningful conversation about what it means to live and love in this world. That's what you'll hear and who you'll hear from in our new podcast series called Life Together. Each episode will be hosted by one of our ministers and will feature a conversation with one or two or even several of our beloved church members. They'll answer a handful of questions about their story, about objects or artifacts that represent their journey, about questions or doubts they wrestle with, and why they are a member, and finally, what gives them hope. As you listen to their wisdom and laughter, their audacious hope and abundant love, I trust you'll be as inspired and moved as I am on the regular. T.S. Eliot once asked, "What life have you if you have not life together?" Join us this season for Life Together. Hello, and welcome to the First on Fifth Life Together podcast. It's so good to have you back with us as we continue in our series of conversations about life together with some of our wonderful, wonderful members. And today we are so fortunate to have with us Kara Thompson and Leah Clark. Kara is the Senior Marketing Manager for Advocate Health, Wake Forest School of Medicine, a nice long title, as has Leah is the Director of Global Coaching Operations for the Center for Creative Leadership. Both of you have wonderful spouses and wonderful children of all ages whose lives are intertwined because your lives are intertwined as sisters who have grown up together and share your life just down the street from each other, right? Yep. Kara and Leah are part of a family in our church that is multi-generational. And there isn't many of we don't have many multi-generational families in the church. So I love that we get to talk today about your life and what it means for you to be part of our church, and kind of like we'll just talk. I have a series of questions that we'll talk through, and you all just answer as you feel so led. It has been a delight to get to know both of you. You're just some of my very favorites. And so I would love for both of you to talk about just your story, like the people or places or events in your life that have shaped, for good or ill, your understanding of God and faith.
I mean, this church is everything. I mean, Leah, we started coming here when Leah was a year old. She had her baby dedication at this church.
Oh my God. With you as a baby.
With her as a baby.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And she called my name in front of everybody at the church.
Because she was always my favorite person.
Obviously, right?
So anyway, Dad was always in the choir.
Yes.
And we sat in the balcony.
Oh my gosh. Right.
For our whole childhood, and then sat there with our kids eventually when we left and came back. So, moved on with our careers and then came back to live here. So anyway, I think I stood up, maybe last year when we were saying why things were so important to us here. And then it's just that it's every memory I've ever had, really, of any church. I do remember going to a church when we lived in Mississippi when I was little.
Yeah, right.
But just like, form the very initial. But I mean, this is like where we've always been surrounded. Dad was such a huge proponent of church every Sunday, and we came on Sunday afternoons, and we came on Wednesdays, and we were just here all the time. And it was youth group, huge youth group, huge everything. So, I mean, I've spent so many hours of my life here.
Yeah. Yeah. Same. And I remember being younger when, and Mom would lead. What would she?
Oh, yeah, with Mr. Edwards.
So with Bob Edwards, she and Bob Edwards were big buddies. And so they wanted to always take care of the kids during the service. And so she'd let me come with her. It was like my first time getting to know like someone that was older, not in my family.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved Mr. Edwards with all my heart and soul. And he was one of my first friends.
Oh, I love
And there were so many of those stories where every human that was here of all ages was so kind to us. And they were just always there with a hug or a support. And I think, you know, Mom and Dad always had a very strong faith.
Yeah.
And we didn't just come to church and that was it. They incorporated thinking about, you know, the walking in the way of Christ throughout every week. And it was what we did. And
blessings at mealtime and saying our prayers. Dad's one of his favorite things was laying with us at night to say our prayers.
He
Leah
also
had a long prayer every night, very long. She prayed for them all.
So what I would do is that Kara and our rooms would be beside each other, and ever since she was in my life, she was just my favorite person. And finally, she let me be her friend when I was 8. But
we're 4 years apart.
Oh, yeah.
So I would crawl like on the floor and go to hide and listen to her prayer.
Oh my
and
gosh.
then I would crawl back in my room and then they'd come do my prayers and I try to mimic it. But I always wanted to incorporate every animal that we had that passed away. And then after a number of years, that really adds up. Including the tadpoles that died. I mean, there was a lot. Laverne and Shirley. That's what their names were. So, but I just, you know, everything, even the small little things, we were talking about the impact of Laverne and Shirley in their tadpole existence in heaven. So, you know, so it was always something having to do with, you know, why we're here. And then, but what beautiful place we get to go when we're not here anymore.
Definitely. Dad was such a huge, he was like, he would always be like, well, I got my crown ready. I got, you know, this is another jewel in my crown. He was always like ready. And we have a huge extended family in Mississippi. So everyone that we live with in Mississippi was also Baptist. I mean, there's hundreds of us. So there really is. And so our Uncle BG, he would always be like, oh, come to my funeral when I die. I mean, he was, you know, in his 70s and he lived to be 90 almost. So, or 91, something like that. And he was one of Dad's best friends. And so he would be like, it was just like a very verbal thing that everybody's like, we're not scared of. We get to be with our family that's not here anymore.
Wow.
You know, it's just a big part of what we were. It was always a beautiful thing, obviously.
Yeah.
So when we knew when Dad passed away that he was in a good place and it wasn't anything we had to worry about. I don't think everybody goes through life thinking of it like that.
Yeah.
That's really hopeful framing for death. For young children, like to just kind of learn from that perspective, that sort of demystifies what happens after life is over, and maybe not that it makes it easier, but just that there's a different framing for it. I love that your dad did that.
Yeah, I think it's also a realization that every day is not about what you do for, you know, it's just thinking about what you're doing and why you're doing it. Yeah. And being in the moment with who you're with and doing it with charity and love in your heart. So, those were things that we grew up with and that I still hold really.
Yeah. He was a joyful person. Yes. And he brought Carpe Diem to every day.
Yeah. 100%.
He even brought that to the choir. Your dad, you know, obviously sang in the choir with his sisters, both of whom are church members, Jerry and Johnny. And Gosh,
We were so excited when they joined the church. We were like, this is what it's all about. Finally, we've got our crew.
Got the whole crew here at First Baptist.
Every human that we could get.
Yeah, we were like really happy about it.
And Pat and Mark Thompson, we call our cousins.
That's right, of course. Of course.
So we try to extend as much Thompson that we can in First Baptist.
I love it.
And we still have those same friends that we've had that were
Wow.
our older friends. Well, I mean, Mr. Edwards, we would still call his friend, even though we don't get to see him as much. I get to talk to him sometimes on the Center for Education and the Arts. But like the Baxleys, the Thompsons, Dr. Bennett was our pediatrician.
Yes,
and we're still buddies. And those are the people that still Linda, Stewart, you know, we all the people that we still consider our friends, you know, and we really are still all friends, and they make that's the place that we come to be here with our friends.
That's right.
Yes.
They watched you grow up, and now they're watching your children grow up. Like, what a gift.
And so fast.
I know.
And they're not judging us for the way we're raising them.
No, not at all. Of course not. No.
So that makes them even more blessed. And
That's a good friend right there.
That
That's
is.
what that is. Okay, aside from, Laverne and Shirley, the tadpoles, my next question is about objects or artifacts. So obviously we live this life in a particular place and particular places, and sometimes there's like a thing or a person or a just something that kind of captures for you what your journey of life and faith has been like. So I wonder if there was an artifact or two, like what might that be?
I will say one thing that we always joke about in our family is that I have a short memory.
Okay.
And I can't, I just,
It's a blessing.
God loves me the way I am.
Of course.
And so when having a short memory is that I lose everything.
Yes.
So every artifact that I have had that I've really loved, I've lost. So
And you can't remember it, so it doesn't matter.
and I can't, but I can. There are some. But then Kara and I transitioned to tattooing them on ourselves. I'm like, this will be the way.
Yes.
I shall not forget this thing. It was living rent free in here.
Yes.
And now the artifact, we've
Yes.
become the living artifact
Yes, I love
of our faith.
Yes.
So,
You should tell the story, the
Okay.
initial story, before we share our artifacts.
So, when I was younger, I was probably, I don't know, seven.
Yeah.
And we were in the living room and I was doing like somersaults on the ground. I'm not really sure
As
why.
7-year-olds do.
As you do.
It felt like a really good idea. And I did it and I hit, we had, like an
armoire kind of
Okay.
thing for the TV.
the TV,
Yeah,
and
right.
I hit the side of it and I knocked the whole door off.
Oh,
Broke the door from the
Like straight off. Not like a sideways, like
that was a serious
Jackie
somersault.
Chan.
Right.
Yes.
100%. And I jumped up in pure fear because my mom was
loved
scary.
things.
Oh,
and was
okay,
very
loved
concerned
things.
about the thing.
Yeah, she wasn't
As
scary.
a mother would be.
Of course, right?
And so I ran downstairs and I was just really nervous and I ran into Dad's arms and I'm crying and I told him and he goes, life goes on. And I don't know why, but it meant so much because he wasn't judgmental and he wasn't upset. And he was just like, it's just a thing. And what are things when there's so much more?
Yeah.
And so all throughout life, whenever things have been tough or hard or, challenging, we've always said,
When our kids kick the
Life
door
goes
off the
on.
thing.
Yes.
or not
We
paint
didn't,
all over the
we might have
ground.
done a different thing.
That's right.
And so it's really been just a tagline of, remembering that it's not, as my son would say, it's not that deep.
It's not that deep.
And life
That's
goes
right.
on.
That deep.
And so when Dad passed away, we decided to scour through all of his things.
He did a lot of writing, and
Yeah. He did.
that was nice. That's a good thing to say.
That was
Right. Okay, I thought so. He wrote a lot on tablets, the yellow
Okay.
legal pads.
Oh.
Legal
Lots of legal pads. So we had to go through a lot of paperwork. He was definitely a saver. So anyway, we were able to find lots of handwritten words.
Yes.
And he sent us cards. He always wrote, Mom and Dad always wrote us amazing cards.
Beautiful
every
cards.
year.
Wow.
Handwritten, like long handwritten notes, and he like decorated all the cards. So we keep all the cards and we have
Yeah.
all the stuff. So anyway, we decided to get a tattoo in his handwriting.
Oh.
And Leah did hers last year, and I finally went earlier this year. And so that is our artifact.
Oh, look at that.
Uh-huh. So
It's Daddy's handwriting.
Yeah.
Which he had the best handwriting. He had the most he had the most beautiful L's.
yeah.
And there it is.
Which is
There it
Leah.
is.
He had so many good L's because he wrote Leah's name all the time.
Yeah, that's
so,
right.
And that's
That's
Lorelai and Lila.
Yes,
so
of course.
we have lots of good examples of L.
Oh, I
So
love
anyway,
that.
yeah.
And I would say the only other artifact that always just comes to mind, I don't have it anymore, but when I was really scared when I was younger, and I was afraid of monsters in the closet,
Yep.
which are,
Right.
it's a
Yeah,
very
they got a
normal
movie. They got
fear.
2 movies about it, actually.
And when I was just having such a hard time, and Dad gave me a bookmark with scripture on it. And I don't remember what the scripture was, but he was just like, ultimately said, when you are scared, just remember you're not alone. So even when we're not here, it's not about if we're in the room with you. It's that God's always with you and you're never alone. And you always have his strength with you all the time.
Like the verse today that we sang.
Yeah.
And that really resonated with me. And
Yeah.
I was able to get over my fear. And so that was really powerful for me.
Yep.
And artifacts, when growing up, Dad had one Bible. It was like this Good News Bible.
Yep.
And he brought it with him all the time. And he would be out in the, we spent a lot of time in the parking lot.
Right.
And he would always pick up leaves or pick up a flower and he'd press it into his, he'd find a beautiful leaf and he'd put it in his Bible.
Wow.
So we still have his Bible. And then we have this, I got him a cross necklace. And so he wore it until the chain broke. But we have his cross necklace, and Leah often wears his wedding ring on a chain a lot. You have all that.
I didn't lose that, and I wore it every day for a year after he passed away. That was I promised him. I took him everywhere that I went for a year.
Yeah.
That's
he
really
went with me.
beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of your dad and thinking about is there a better truth to make sure you teach your children than God is always with you and God's love will never leave you, and wherever you are, wherever I am, wherever life leads you, God is already with you, and that your dad knew that you needed to know that is just a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I love that he made sure you knew it.
His other favorite was even the birds, and mustard seed. And so, and that was he's always like, we'd get worried about something. He's like, you don't have to worry. And we're like, oh, that was a lofty aspiration for him. Maybe worry a scotch.
A little bit.
Just get in there.
Right.
But he always had just super faith that everything was going to be fine. And it really always was. I mean, he
And
really,
if not, life
we
goes
said,
on.
what a horseshoe that guy's
And if
got.
not, life goes on.
And if not, life goes on. Yeah. I mean, he was ready to attack every day, no matter what. He really did. Even though he had a lot of health challenges, so did Mom throughout their lives. He was like, it's going to work out. It's going to be okay. God is with us always.
Right.
Yeah.
So I wonder, we've talked obviously a lot about your dad, and he died how many years ago now? Was that 20?
Almost 4.
21.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So almost
July
4.
21. I remember that so distinctly. And he had been healthy and well and here a lot, and it came as a shock, I'm sure, and was just terribly hard. And I wonder, either with his passing or just in general, about whatever questions or doubts that you've had in your life of faith. Like sometimes, obviously, doubts come when something unexpected happens and you unexpectedly have a grief or a loss that you've not prepared for because, the shape of your life is such that your dad has been nice and healthy and part of your everyday life. So I wonder, it can be about your dad or not, but have there been certain things you've wrestled with in your life or in your faith?
I wrestle with so many things. I think I'm a natural worrier.
Okay.
So it was, back to having Kara as a sister, it was always really good because she isn't a natural worrier in that way. Like she always had an exuding confidence that I didn't have. So I learned to mask confidence. So I looked like I was really confident. I could tell myself, yeah, you've got this. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, you don't. So I think, you know, for me, what happened even with COVID is it was so scary, and there was and it was Dad died during COVID, like July of COVID and all that stuff, and we really didn't come to church, you know, and so I had a departure from the space that I'd been in for so long, and so I had a lot of doubts about coming back and what that would mean, and
life without him here.
Yeah.
This is where,
and
now it's where we come to be with him, because this is where it's such a strong part of who we were. So without him, it made it hard.
And even like, you know, am I, you know, being a good mother? Am I being a good partner? Am I being a good sister or a daughter? And I think one thing that I did, well, a couple things for me, and then I'd be curious to see what you say. But like, so for me, when we came back, I joined the choir so that I could sing and have a song in my heart. And one, because I like listening to the tenors sing, and it always reminds me of Dad. But two, I found that by singing and playing bells, that I was unleashing like a part of myself that was joyful, that I didn't feel like maybe I deserved to have or to let out. And each year for Lent, I used to like give up chocolate, and then like 2 years ago I gave up being mean to myself. And because I've just been such a categorically sure that I deserved bad things. I'm not really sure
Just
why.
what she talked about today.
I just was 100% sure that I was rotten through and through. And so I decided 2 years ago that I would give that up for Lent, and then I would do it the whole year. And then last year for Lent, I gave up judging others. Because I thought, okay, well, I spent a year giving love to myself, then I can show the same love to others. And that has been a really powerful thing. But they're all built on kind of a fear of things I've just always had that have deep inside, but that I knew that I could decide to change if I put my faith into it.
Do you mind if I ask a follow-up? Because I'm so curious. What did you learn about yourself through these experiences of giving those two things up for Lent?
I learned that by and large, I assign, my brain works really quickly. And so I would categorize things as good or bad, and myself included, every judgment, every decision. And so I would speak first and then think later, and then judge everything while I was thinking about it, on both instances, to myself and then to others. And so I learned to put a pause in between and be curious. So if I was feeling frustration or anger or fear, like that's absolutely wrong, then to say, oh, isn't that curious? Why do I feel that way? Why would I say that?
They love it when you do it at work too.
Yeah, they actually really do.
They do.
I'm curious so much. I'd say,
they're like, oh
gosh,
gosh, she's so curious again, guys.
She's really curious. But I do think that has forced a layer of considering, is there a better way to approach this? Is there a way that's closer to walking, in the way of Jesus? And that, candidly, is what I'm doing in all of the situations for me, because I take away the pressures of, what would make me feel bad and make others feel bad, which thus was not walking in the way of Christ. So that has been really helpful.
I love that. I love that little space that you describe as curiosity. That's so helpful for me too. Like just the space to examine so that I'm not only reacting, just a little bit of time to give myself before I, get mad at myself or get mad at someone else or judge or whatever. That's an important little space. It's like just a pause, just this little holy pause.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And when in doubt, I'll like hold something in my hand.
Yeah.
So that I can, think through it.
Yeah.
To ensure that I do
that.
that.
Yeah.
Because the human me still fails at that sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we are human. Yes. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Kara, what about you? Any particular questions or doubts that you wrestle with?
Well, mine are all related to my children, mostly. Mm-hmm. Certainly I did feel I didn't have any doubts after Dad died. I mean, he wasn't actually healthy his whole life. He was sick his whole life. So being diabetic and having heart present, he felt like that and was able to show that. But it just what I always know is that just because someone walks around looking healthy, it doesn't mean that they are. And being able to judge people just because someone parks in a handicapped spot and gets out of the car doesn't mean they don't have a heart issue. It's none of our, everybody has their own journey. Everybody's has health issues. I mean, everybody. You will at some point if you live long enough. So anyway, when he passed away, I didn't have doubts. I did experience it was hard to be away from church during that time, but I also was like, everybody's doing it. So you gave yourself grace. It wasn't like you were a failure because you didn't come to church necessarily. Yeah. So we just took our break, like some people, everybody wasn't allowed to get together and took a little bit longer. And it was hard to be here after he did die. And so I didn't really want to be here. It was too hard to be here. Yeah. But when the new year started around Lent time, the following year in 2022, Leah decided to join the church around that time. And Lent is just always such an amazing time period to me. Monday, Thursday, Mom and I would come and do the whole, every single day of Holy Week, we would come previously. So, and always came when I was at work downtown to come to get my ashes every time. So anyway, it was such a big part from decades before, with Dr. Hughes, when he's the one that kind of instilled Lenten time. Yes. We didn't really know about it before then. And such a magical part of our journey. And to me, so it's just a reflective time. So anyway, coming back and starting Lent season that year was like a rededication to sitting down in front. I wanted to be down front. Mom is the one that wanted, she was not, she has never really come back to church just from her own physical issues since then. So I was like, all right, Leah, I'm going to sit down in front. I'll be with the kids, we'll be cheering you on. We're your cheering section. And you're like, and it was so much easier to see,
obviously,
without Dad being there. And Johnny and Jerry were both still there, which is great, but they were having their own sadness journey without Dad. Sure. But having Leah be there, they needed Leah. And it was so great for her to feel not his shoes in that way, because obviously different area,
different size shoes.
Different size shoes, and different voice,
different jokes
to be there, but similar, probably align, bringing the same energy.
Indeed.
So I think, and it was so great for Pat and Mark and Dr. Bennett, everybody, that they could see, a little bit of that, and they love Leah so much and love Dad. So anyway, it was a good focal point for all of us. So that wasn't hard. It was after that, because my kids struggled believing in God so much by losing Pop.
Oh my gosh.
We were so worried about Flynn because that's his best friend. Yeah. And they spent all their time together. Yeah. And they were really just hitting their stride of being best buddies. And all of our kids have kind of like another person besides their parents that's their special person in our family. And then, our cousin Jen had moved here in 2021. She comes with us sometimes too. So having even a broader family here. But my kids struggled so much, and Lila struggled so much. So, and, going into therapy with her and seeing how she just really hated God. Why did he take Pop away from us? Struggle. You talked to her some. Amy talked to her a lot. We finally got her. She made some really bad choices, and it will affect her whole life of just, some really sad times of how she, really needed to go through her own discovery of God. And the one person that would have been the best person is the one person she was upset about. He would have been the guy. And I think about all the time, like, I wish Dad was here because I'm not strong enough to answer these questions. And that was the hardest time for me. Not that I had a hard time with God. I know why things happen the way they do, but trying to explain that to her when I was having a problem too was really hard. And so asking for help, which is hard for me sometimes too. Honestly, it's just hard to see that I need help sometimes, but knowing that I needed to reach out to you and Amy to help her through that, because I didn't have the answers, and you answer these questions for people all the time, or you have a way to try to guide them down there. So it was a long journey, but pushing her into doing more camps that were church based and doing passport and with everybody having a little bit more robust youth group here that was really missing for her. And she was just coming of age at that time, 6th grade. So it was a really great moment for her to be able to spend time with you that week and following, and it just really changed. It took some time, but it definitely, that's what helped her get through. And then she decided to join the church and get baptized. And that was such a huge moment for her.
Yes.
And I remember her saying afterwards, she was like, it'll feel different. I thought this was like going to magically fix all these things. And I was like, it's just the beginning of your journey. And she has really enjoyed, I can tell, when your sermon today, I know that we're going to go. Flynn's like, oh my gosh, Lila's going to give me such a hard time. I was like, but which one of y'all is the prodigal son?
Right, there you go.
I think it's going to be flip-flop. He's like, I know she's going to give me a hard time. And then, but the shame and talking about that, that's what Leah and Lila talk about all the time. I don't have that. And I don't feel those things. So I don't really see those things. And so they see those things. She asked Lila the right question. So, and points out how to find the answers in the ways that you were talking about today. And Lila gets definitely down on things or feels a little lost or missing Pop. And she, being here, I tell her, we come every Sunday to remind us how to be this week. That's it. This is where we just gotta reset on the world getting us down. We're just going to sit and listen for an hour. Then we're going to spend some family time together. And we're going to reset. And, and she has a little, what are those things called? Alexa in her room. And so I can hear her in there. She'll start playing her, Christian songs. I know she's in the spirit music. Yes. She's like, I need God to talk to me a little bit right now. And so, she has some nice things that help her through. And Flynn, he still struggles with some of those things about Pop not being here. But we try to just say, this is where we're going to go be with Pop for an hour, which is great. So anyway.
Gosh, these are such rich stories. And I think about I remember when I first came to First on Fifth, you all were up in the balcony. You were still from my vantage point, right up here over on the left with your mom, and your dad was in the choir, and just the kind of the metaphor of coming right down into the heart of the sanctuary, being part of the choir, being here every Sunday. It has been such a joy to watch your family and watch the two of you find your different place in the shape of things without your dad here. It's in his absence. In his absence, there's been this movement of the two of you kind of right at the center. And it's been both encouraging and instructive for me to watch y'all and the way that you love each other and the way you love your children and kind of how you understand what worship is. That is such a beautiful way to describe what we do when we're here. Cause I had my pastor when we lived in Louisville would talk about how Sunday mornings, if you can imagine a football team, it's kind of an odd analogy for right now, but he would talk about how, Sundays when we gather as a church family and we gather for worship, it's like when we get the football team in the huddle. We're in the huddle, we're talking about what we're doing and figuring out who's doing what and just being together. And then when we leave, it's we're playing the game of life. And it feels
playing
that
our
way
parts.
for me too. The reset, it's the grounding moment of the week. So it's really beautiful to hear
But
that.
in the same with that analogy, but you're also trying to remember the plays that you discussed.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So
Right.
it is a constant link back to, okay, well, what is our outcome for this game? And so if our outcome is to, be loving and kind and, give to the community and share, then how do we do that? How do we do that with our
and with
everyday
teenagers,
actions?
usually on the way here, I'm like, y'all need Jesus and y'all need to go.
Jesus, take this wheel right here.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yes, but what has been so nice, I think, is that we've been here for decades. We've been here for at least 3 with Arnett, probably 4, pastors.
Yeah.
And I would say it's so nice. I mean, like, it's nicer than ever to still be with our same friends here these 4 decades later. And seeing you, like, the way that you speak to us makes us want to lean in more and be down in front, because we're seeing somebody that's like us, that has kids like us, struggling with problems. When you say things like you did last week, where you're like, I got to figure out what we're eating for supper, and I got to, what camps are we going to, and all these things. I'm like, yes,
I got to do
we
the same thing. Yeah.
It's just a different face of journey than we grew up with, but it's still the same scripture, but interpreted in a different way, And when we were kids were not welcome to be. They were seen, not heard.
Yeah.
So that's why we started sitting in the balcony, because we were not welcome to be little kids really downstairs.
And I fell asleep a lot. I was
She started falling asleep a lot, and she was loud and busy. Yes. And Mom was like, we're going to sit in the balcony because you embarrass us. So Dad didn't care. So Mom was like, let's take this snoring, slobbery kid upstairs. And then we were free to, like, we could draw and bring a Barbie or whatever. And people, we were not very loud. We were pretty cool, small children once we came to. And, we would have, like, different interactions, and then sitting with friends when we became youth, and Mom still like dagger-eyed us to be quiet. And Dad, and so then as we got older and we had kids, we felt like we should put them in the balcony with us, like that's where we should be, so that they don't distract other people, because that was just like our mentality we were bringing from our childhood. But when you became pastor, it was a different vibe, that we were like, it's cool, we can bring our kids downstairs. And Abigail, like her being so sweet, like during that time, helping other people know. Now, I still worry about kids running around knocking down old people, breaking a hip. But I mean, that's valid.
Yes.
But I think it's just like a different mentality where it's inclusivity of everyone. And all the people that have stayed here through these decades feel that inclusivity, and they embrace it for everybody of all ages and kinds and identities. So I really like that about everyone. And it's nice to see that our friends who have been our friends for 40 years, who are 80 or 75 or whatever, that they are the same. They're the same people we knew they were 40 years ago. Inclusive, supportive.
That's it.
Kind.
We still
good
get
Christians.
to hug Dr. Hughes every Sunday.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're the same good people that we knew they were all along.
Yeah.
Of like, it's nice to see through all these challenges that some continuity for our lives. And that's what we tell the kids all the time. Like, this is a place where you should feel safe. And that's not the way that all the world feels like. So.
Yeah, that's right. You've illustrated so many times throughout our conversation about why the church has mattered to you, and you've kind of already answered this question. But my fourth question that we ask everybody is like, why did you come to First Baptist on Fifth? Like, how did you join the church? Obviously, it was when you were very little. Or is there a quintessential First Baptist story that you like to share?
Well, I think you should talk about how, when you decide, because we came here not of our own choice, but we chose to join the church. So
I know,
I
they
think
don't
that's
let 1-year-olds choose anything.
That's so rude. Baby boss baby.
We shared this a little bit when you and Lorelai and I were talking, but I was a late bloomer to decide to be baptized. And to Dad's constant fear.
Yes.
He was always worried.
What's he really
about? One thing he did worry about is whether you were going to join the church.
He was fearful for
so funny.
my soul. But I was 18 and of all the things that, like Mom, they were such a good pair because Mom was so chill about it. She was like, Leah will, if you just let Leah be herself and you don't try to pressure her, it'll be fine. And so I remember it was right before, just right when I was 18 and I was ready, and I went and I got my my specific blue dress that I wanted to wear to get
the tall
baptized
shoes?
in, and my tall shoes. I had a specific outfit that I was so excited about, but I was excited because I knew I was ready, and I didn't want to commit to something that I wasn't sure about.
Yep.
And I sometimes, it takes me enough time to think about it. I have to spend extra time deciding what I want to do, but once I commit, I'm all in. And so that was really instrumental for me, and that I took it very seriously. But then also, but then I was in college, and I don't know, as much as I took it seriously, then I got really distracted by all the all the normal things.
Yes. Yeah.
And I don't feel like I told this, I think we talked about this too, that meant a lot to me. But then I really lost my way. And then once Dad died and we decided to come back, and it was the same feeling for me. I was like, I will commit, and this will be my place, and I will put this, I will spend time here with love in my heart, and I will sing with my heart and my voice. And every time that I did that, every week and every year since then, I have been the happiest I've ever been. My heart has been the most full. I've felt the most joy in my life, and I 100% attribute it to finding, an inner spark that gets more connected to God. And it's really just been in the past 3 years. But it's the happiest I've ever been.
I joined the church I got baptized when I was young. I was like, I don't know. I can't remember what year it was.
You knew. like Sarah, she was like, yes, I'm already quitted.
But I was in fourth grade. That's what I was. Yeah, I was like, yeah.
She's the oldest child.
Yeah.
She's got oldest child energy all day.
But I do like to wander as well. So I wandered, not from church, but I moved away, moved to Chapel Hill, moved to New York, moved to Raleigh, but I still came back and went to church very often, even on the weekends whenever I could, drive home. I visited some churches in New York, and I decided I want to live there. And even in Raleigh, I never really went to any other churches. I already knew where my church was. It was not a question. It was only the question of would I live here, and I never wanted to live here. Right. Just for the record, I never wanted to live here. No. And my person that I married wanted to stay here, and for his family business, just like Leah and I kind of got trapped by really nice guys.
I'm not trapped.
Trapped in Cartersville.
Joe, if you're listening,
video. That's okay. I said by nice guys. But I was like, well, I want to have my life. I had lived around enough, just like the prodigal son. I had lived around enough, but I didn't have cracked feet or anything. I came back on my own accord. I had my own money at that time. I thought the cracked feet was really good. So they... I knew that I wanted to be with Leah and Mom and Dad. Of course, Leah stayed in Raleigh for a little bit. And Chris and I had decided, we had broken up for a little bit and got back together. And we decided, okay, this is real. We're going to get married. And I was like, you should live in Raleigh or we'll live somewhere else. He was like, I don't think so. And so I was like, fine. It was after September 11th and I had lost my job and I was doing freelance. I was like, okay, I'll move back to Cartersville, spend time with Mom and Dad. Really not my first choice, but the world was leading me in that way. And very soon after that, probably, what was it? Maybe 2008, 9, something like that. No, sorry. Before Chris and I got married. It was like 2002, 3, something like that. And I came to church for Lent, and I was just singing this song, and Dr. Hughes was down in front, and I was like, moved, and I just went down.
Oh my
because
goodness.
I was like, Lent was I don't even know what I was doing for Lent that year, but it's just a lot of thought. And I was like, this is where I want to be at this church. And so I was just like, I cry once a year. This is famously maybe. Yes. Sometimes I'm like, oh, that was a tear. And they're like, oh God. I was like,
serious black with one tear.
Yeah.
From Harry Potter.
Oh God. I wouldn't even trail down. It'd just be one drop.
Right there.
So anyway, but I was started crying, and I was really moved, and I came down to the front. He was like, what are you doing? He wasn't really, he was really cool about it, but he gave me a big hug, and I was just Lent means so much to me. It really is this whole period where you just really get reconnected. And I was like, this is where I want to be. And it wasn't, I mean, I wanted to be with my family and those were great things, but like church this one day was where I was like, this is where I want to be.
Wow.
And I came back up and they're like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm going on down. They're like, okay, what am I?
We're like, you already joined. You don't have to do this. Do you understand how Baptists work?
So it was
This
like
is
such
redundant.
a great day. And they were like, why is she, what's that stuff coming out of her face? She's leaking.
I'm scared.
So anyway, I was like, it was such a big time period. And I was like really dedicated to like, I want to get married to this person. I want to have my life here. I want to be with my family. And and even though it's maybe not one of the lives I thought I would live, I'm so thankful to have spent all this dedicated time with Leah, Mom, Dad. We've been watching these videos like we were telling you, and we just spent every moment together from that, really that period on. Leah moved back shortly after
Immediately.
I did.
Yeah.
Like 2 months later.
I moved to Raleigh to be with her. And then when I was on a trip, she moved home. And I was like, I'm going to stay in Raleigh. I stayed 1 month.
Are you serious?
Immediately moved back.
Yeah, she's like, I'll keep the condo.
I was like, no, I can't be anywhere that you're not.
Yeah.
Right. So, and then she moved 2 doors down from Chris and I.
See?
And then her future husband lived across the way. So we just spent all of our time together. And Mom and Dad, we lived in Mom and Dad's neighborhood. So we were together all the time. Like, and so I would not have exchanged, the journey of living where we do to be apart. We always like to be together. So
Yeah.
End of story.
End of story.
You too. Okay, so my last question is like, what gives you hope these days? We were talking before we started recording, like these are hard times in which to live, and we like just in the world, and you have teenagers, and life can be challenging. So what gives you hope?
Well, I mean, my kids give me a lot of hope. Just they do. I just think that's a really good question. I feel like it's a bit of a choice. And all the the inputs are the same. The destruction and the loss and the turmoil, they are constant. In the environment, and sometimes it feels heavier than others. But after COVID, I was like, my gosh, if something can impact our entire globe, and then we can get out and the sun still shines and the birds still sing and the plants still come up from the ground, then I can keep that same spark of love in my heart. So I can nurture it. And, sometimes it'll feel a little dormant, like the plants over the winter, but I will nurture it and I will be the light that I want to see. And I see that with my kids, and I see that with your kids, and I see that with, I don't know, our church. I just, I see a beauty in every person, and I want to make the world better, even if it's never going to be a perfect world, but what is. So
I just feel like, life goes on, it'll work out.
I was just about to say, as you're describing what gives you hope, it's like, well, life goes on.
People, I mean, governments change, people change. We can't do anything about it, I won't give you my whole TED talk on it, but I have a couple, but what the media wants us to believe and what politicians want us to believe, it's pretty much a facade. It is real the way they make us feel, but there's really nothing that can be done except face every challenge individually each day. Life goes on. You can't worry about things you can't control. So you just go with there's a bigger picture. I feel really confident that God's got it all worked out. And we're just a part of a a larger picture. And this may be tough. We've had many cyclical times in all of our relationships, except ours. But
yes, except ours.
But things are. If you live long enough, things are going to come back around. It's just up and down, and it's a cycle. And the longer you worry about it, the more you're missing out on probably some really great things happening at your own house.
And I just think there's always something that we can do.
Yeah.
So there is always a way that we can help and add kindness into the world and interjects it into an individual, into a group, into
redirect into something positive.
Yeah, I mean,
you can't control something.
Always needs something.
That's right.
And needs kindness. So for as heavy as things are, there is always a way for us to create hope.
I'm more of a one-on-one connector. I would rather do something for someone that I know or tangential, somebody in our community that needs something one-on-one. And that makes me feel better because that's something you can do.
That's right.
You can pass a piece at church that day and touch somebody that hasn't had a hug that week or something,
You're speaking to like the power of agency. Like you have agency. It's not all lost. Like and that's where
we can't control government funding, but we can control some other good things.
Yeah.
But our cousin Jen and I were talking about, what gives us hope and how do we spark hope. And so, we were talking about small things that we can do if it matters to us enough. If you don't want to shop at this large retailer because of the, the way that they've put policies in place against DEI, then don't. If you really are on social media and that is a place where you like to scroll, then go to underrepresented communities and, people that need your support and watch the whole video and like it because they're monetized for that. So anything, even if you're sitting at home doing what you could perceive as nothing, you could have a financial impact on someone else. So there are ways, if you're thinking about it, that we can support communities and people, even if we don't know them.
Leah and Kara, I have learned so much, not just about you, but from you today.
Well, we've learned so much. We're giving you our best.
You have.
Our best content.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your insights and your encouragement, your agency, your artifacts, your reminders that life does go on.
Hopefully the artifacts in this church are still okay after our children are out there.
After all our children.
One in particular.
All right.
Those are my journeys that I worry about.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you to all of you who have tuned in for our podcast today. If you would like to listen to previous episodes, you can do so on our website, firstonfifth.org. You can go to our YouTube page or our podcast channel. We hope that you will be inspired by all these stories that you're hearing. Thanks again. Come listen again next time.